This is going to be practice 15, and sorry for taking such a long time to get it going today. Wednesdays, the days between Tuesday and Thursday are really hard for me. Just the busyness of teaching. At any rate, so let's get warmed up. But again, I want for us to start to contextualize our warm-up into some real design. So what we're going to do is, like, the page that you're looking at is kind of twice the size of an 8.5 by 11 page. And what we can do is we can start to, if you take your page actually and you hold it on its side, then here would be the proportion of your page, about like that. And what we'll do is we'll try to make our practices fit well into that page, which is an interesting challenge. And let's just begin. We'll say that right now we're working in grid structures, which are very useful, easy things to help us get our pages in order. And so we'll start out by finding the center of the page. And then here's the center of the page. And then let's project that left to the left and to the right. And okay, so that gives us a kind of 4-part grid structure. And let's take the first thing. We'll cover going from this edge to here. We'll take a piece like that, and we'll come down. And we're going to make our space from the bottom a little bit bigger, this being the bottom, a little bit bigger than the space from the top. Okay, so this will be the first position that we're going to work within on this page. And again, the proportions that we talked about in class, so let's go with the 20/80. And the way that I basically find it is there's the 50, so that's a 50/50, okay? At the 3/4 mark, the 3/4 mark is 75/25, so if I scoot just a little ways this way, that's 20/80. I'm sorry, I don't want to work with the 20/80. I want to work with the 40/60. So we'll put, so if this is the 80, that would mean half of that. Probably going to move it a little bit this way. So here's a proportionality that we'll work within. We'll take our first design and work within it. And our first design is going to be one that involves us with ellipses, our regular elliptical warm-up. And so let's begin with middle-size ellipse. And like in class, when we were putting these ellipses down, in class we started to recognize, we started to work with not only the ellipse, but also the negative space that they leave. And so once you've got an ellipse set up, if you go in and fill in the negative space, creating what we call a mass. You're creating a mass out of the negative space that's left. And your method of filling in, as was said in class, will determine what your style is. You know, your style is partially related to something as seemingly mundane as how you make marks, how you move the pencil. Okay? So here we are. And one thing about this that I found is that if you work really fast, you have a tendency to do a bad job. But working really slow has a tendency to kill your enthusiasm for the piece. And so what you need to find is kind of a happy medium, kind of like a balance where you're like, okay, I can do this. It's not that hard. And later on, you might decide that you want to do this, but you want to switch to charcoal, or you want to switch to ink, or you want to switch to, something that makes this process more to your liking. I'm filling this one in a way that's radiating in a way that I think is cool. And this, like just what we might consider just filling in, it's a really important part of the process. It establishes big blacks. It makes our piece beautiful. So then I'm gonna ask you to go back and give it just one last, once you get through it, then if you just go back and give it one last layer of consideration. Like I said, we're not going for perfection, but we want for it to look like we cared about it, like we made an effort. All right. And I think it's really cool to go in and remove some of these lines so that the white space, so now we start looking at that mass of white against the mass of black in a flat 2D design. It has really cool dynamics. And you can erase some of them, but not all of them, or you can erase all of them, whatever you happen to be thinking is cool right now. Okay, so that was our middle practice, and so now I'm going to do a couple of lines of thin ones, and I'm going to do this thing where I go from the background to the foreground with really thin ellipses. So I'm going to start out tiny and light with really thin ellipses. Okay, and now here's another row, and I'm going to go a little bit bigger. And these ones I want to make a little bit harder, a little darker. And you'll notice that that makes, not only does the size differential bring them forward, but also the darkness of the line brings them forward. And now these ones, I want to go bigger still. Nice. And I want to try to do this. I want to try to put one in here that's even smaller and lighter. Sort of sends them around and gets them disappearing. I kind of like that. Okay, so now here. And in here, I'm going to do a composition of straight circles. And as you're doing this stuff, I really want for you to be thinking, what is the power that this particular move is having? Like, what does it make you feel? And I would say that this right here is poorly placed. There's kind of a rule, which is you want to hit it or miss it. Having something be just close kind of, it goes against the rule. So in this instance, I'm massively overlapping the edge. It's when like this right here, where these two are kissing, that kind of violates the rule, unless like everything is kissing, and it's turning out that quite a lot is. Okay, moving along. I'm going to set one up that is exactly the same size as the one that I just had. And as you're setting these up, work at developing your horizontal lines and your vertical lines, your sketching ability. Okay, and I'm going to use this one to do curves, and just with the two dots. Just practicing my single curves. I might start from the other one, see how that feels. Again, it turns into, it has such dynamic insinuations, these two curves connected by dots. We had a really cool conversation in class about the form that this particular exercise suggests. You know, it's really interesting. Okay, page 1. On to page 2. Again, I'll mark off your page. Okay, here's page 2. I want to mark the center of it. And I would like to use this top corner for a composition in triangles. With overlaps. Interesting, active shapes, possibly aggressive shapes. And this time I'm not going to outline, I'm not going to fill in the negative space. I'm going to do what's called a holding line, okay? So the holding line is a heavy line that enunciates something, right? I'll show you other examples of it. But right now, the holding line would essentially go where the negative space is, outlining the negative space. It's an interesting tactic. So what we've done in this design is we've switched back and forth, really, from positive space to negative space. And the resultant shapes are really compelling. So I'm emphasizing these negative shapes. Interesting. And before I disappear it, it's also interesting to see how exactly, you know, the effect of breaking the box that it's in. You see that the effect that that has? Well, we're breaking this box with a holding line right here, a frame, outer frame. That's a place where we can risk a really nice heavy line. We'll try to center our exercise. I'd like to do a set of triangles again. And then with these triangles, what I'd like to do is I'd like to build curves into them. And again, we'll surround the negative space. And again, I just really like that. I think that that makes extremely dynamic design. Okay. I'm going to come from this edge to this edge. Try to have a space between these, which is similar to the space on top. And inside of here, I'm going to do a practice of all tending lines. And in a way, you'll find out, like, these are fanning lines, right? And you can find out with these fanning lines that they're almost little triangles, right? Like, but you're cutting a part of it off, like cutting the tip of the triangle off. And it's an interesting key to perspective. It's like a triangle is insinuated by perspective. I think that's cool. Working with big, medium, small will always help you increase the impact of your design. So I hate the way that those two are hitting each other, so I'm just going to stretch that one a little bit. And then if you go through and the ones that are coming forward, if you really let yourself add darkness to those, the ones that are most forward, it will do a lot to send the other ones back in space. And this one I would like to lighten. Here's a problem I'm having. Look at this. Something's wrong from here to there, and it could be that this side is a little too low. That helps. Okay, that's better. I would really like to be, I was always wanted to be able to draw just perfect grids. Okay, page 3. So I've been thinking a lot about a really useful shape lately, marking the center. And this time I'm going to break this page into 3 equal parts. And we can think of this as like 3 monoliths. Oh, I missed, but I'm going to live with it. The shape that I was thinking about for us was this shape of a bowl. So we're starting with an ellipse and then rounding. And it occurs to me that this shape comes up over and over and over again. We could just play with it, you know, like so. Here's an upside down bowl, which could be kind of like a tree. It also looks like an eyeball. Yeah, these are all tending to be side view, but you can also be looking like directly into a bowl. Here's what would happen. You'd see like that. And wherever the placement of that is, that tells you the angle of what you're viewing it from. So if we were like, for instance, if we do that, that tells us how this thing is tilted. Here, let's do this. I want to do a background shape, rectangle. And another one further back. These are way far back shapes. And then we're going to do a two-sided midground. More two-sidedness. Background still one-sided. And then the foreground will make three-sided. And what we're doing is these foreground shapes, these shapes, and the foreground shapes are volumes. These are volumes now. They're linear. We've established volumes with line. Linear established volumes. And in here, let's practice our S. Some of the spaces of line crossover, like this right here, is really beautiful. And up here too. Like that's an interesting composition in and of itself. I'm like chopping these compositions out of here. Very elegant. Some of the nicest looking designs on this page, really. Perhaps be something rewarding to experiment with in depth. Like why do those end up so good? This feels like a mistake, the crop right there. I want to move it down. It gets good. It gets a little better too. considering that shape of a rectangle. Not quite better on that little bottom piece. However, it's still kind of nice. Okay, page 3. Again, I would like to work with our proportional, our dividing proportions. So we'll start with a 50-50, okay? There's 50-50. And underneath this, I'd like for you to draw 3 lamp designs divided 50-50. Not quite. Okay. And then we'll do a 60-40. This one will be the 80-20. And that one will be the 90-10. Not very pretty, right? Struggling to come up with something interesting for this last one. It looks a lot like the other ones. There we go. Okay, and that'll be it for our homework for today, okay? All right.